Most forests whisper with wind. This one whispered with voices. And the first time I heard my name echo through those trees, it wasn't the wind calling me back. It was something that knew me. The town of Black Hollow barely existed on maps. If you blinked while driving through the Appalachian backroads, you would miss it completely. A single gas station, a diner that closed before sunset, and a handful of houses clinging to the edge of an endless forest, that was all Black Hollow offered to the world. I never planned to return there. But after my grandmother died, I inherited her old cabin on the outskirts of town, pressed right against the boundary of Ravenwood Forest. The lawyer said she specifically requested that I take it, along with everything inside. I hadn't seen her in 12 years. Still, blood has a way of pulling you back to places you tried to forget. The drive from Atlanta took nearly 6 hours. The deeper I drove into the mountains, the weaker my phone signal became. By the time I reached Black Hollow, my GPS had frozen, and the sky had turned a dull gray that swallowed sunlight like fog swallowing headlights. The town looked unchanged. The same cracked sidewalks, the same faded storefronts, even the diner sign still flickered between two working letters, DIN_R. I parked at the gas station to ask for directions. Inside, an elderly man stood behind the counter, flipping through a magazine. He didn't look up when the doorbell chimed as I entered. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you know how to get to Ravenwood Road?" His hand froze mid-page. Slowly, he looked up at me. His eyes narrowed, scanning my face like he was trying to recognize a ghost. "You related to Margaret Hale?" he asked. My chest tightened. She was my grandmother. He exhaled slowly, like I'd confirmed something he feared. Then he pointed out the window toward a dirt road cutting behind the station. "Follow that road until the pavement disappears. Then keep driving another mile. Cabins at the tree line." "Thanks," I said. As I turned to leave, he added quietly, "You shouldn't stay there after dark." I paused. "Why not?" He stared at the counter instead of answering. "Because the woods don't like visitors," he muttered. The road to the cabin was worse than I remembered. Potholes swallowed half the tires, and branches scraped against my car like skeletal fingers dragging across glass. When I finally reached the clearing, the cabin stood exactly as it had in my childhood memories. Small, wooden, slightly leaning to one side like it had grown tired of standing. The forest loomed behind it. Ravenwood. The trees looked thicker than normal forest growth. Their trunks twisted unnaturally, and their branches tangled together overhead, forming a canopy so dense it blocked most of the sky. The entire forest looked sealed off. I grabbed my bags and stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked beneath my feet like it was warning me with every step. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of dust and pine. The furniture remained untouched, covered in white sheets. A fireplace stood against the far wall, and above it hung a faded photograph of my grandmother smiling beside me when I was 7 years old. I barely recognized that kid. He looked happy. I set my bags down and began removing the sheets from the furniture. As I worked, something felt off. The silence wasn't normal. Even in remote areas, you hear insects, birds, or wind moving through leaves. Here, nothing. Just a thick, suffocating stillness. Night fell quickly. By 7 p.m., darkness had swallowed the clearing entirely. I lit a fire in the fireplace and opened one of my grandmother's old journals, hoping to find information about property details or maintenance instructions. Instead, I found warnings. Every page contained dates, notes, and strange observations. The voices returned last night. They know he is gone. Now they ask for her. The boundary stones must remain intact. I frowned, flipping pages faster. Some entries were scratched out violently, like she'd regretted writing them. Others contained rough sketches of the forest. Several drawings circled specific trees marked with symbols I didn't recognize. Then I heard it, a faint sound outside. At first, I thought it was wind brushing through leaves. But the rhythm felt wrong. Too deliberate, almost like footsteps moving through dry branches. I froze, listening. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just wildlife. The forest surrounded the cabin, after all. But then, I heard it again. This time closer. Crunch. 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 Slow. Measured. Like someone circling the cabin. I grabbed the flashlight from my bag and walked toward the front window. Pulling the curtain aside, I shined the beam across the clearing. Nothing. Just trees standing shoulder to shoulder like soldiers guarding the forest's edge. I let out a breath and stepped back. That's when I heard my name. Eli. The voice was faint, stretched, and distorted, like it traveled through water before reaching my ears. I froze completely. Eli. It came again, drifting from the forest. My pulse hammered in my ears. The voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. I rushed to the door and flung it open, shining my flashlight toward the trees. "Hello," I shouted. No response. The beam cut through darkness, illuminating bark, vines, and tangled branches. Nothing moved. Then I noticed something strange. The forest edge looked closer. I blinked, trying to focus. The tree line had always been about 20 yards from the cabin. Now, it looked like it had crept forward at least 5 yards. That was impossible. Trees don't move, right? I stepped outside, my boots crunching against gravel. The night air felt colder than it should have been, carrying a damp, earthy smell like freshly turned soil. "Who's there?" I called again. Silence answered. I walked toward the tree line, my flashlight trembling slightly in my grip. As I approached, I noticed markings carved into several tree trunks. They formed circles intersected by jagged lines, similar to the sketches in my grandmother's journal. The carvings looked fresh. I reached out and touched one of them. The bark felt warm, almost pulsing under my fingertips. Suddenly, a branch snapped deeper inside the forest. I jerked my flashlight toward the sound. For a split second, I thought I saw movement, something tall slipping between trees. Not walking, gliding. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. "Hello," I whispered, barely able to force the word out. Then the forest whispered back. Not just one voice this time. Dozens. Overlapping murmurs filled the air, too faint to understand but loud enough to form a chorus of whispers drifting through the trees. My name echoed among them. Eli. 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 I ran back to the cabin and slammed the door shut, locking it with shaking hands. The whispers didn't stop immediately. They hovered outside for several minutes, swirling through the clearing like invisible fog pressing against the cabin walls. Then, silence. Complete and total. I stood frozen by the door, listening for any sign they might return. When nothing happened, I forced myself to breathe normally and returned to the fireplace. My grandmother's journal lay open where I left it. But the page had changed. I swear to God, it had changed. A new sentence had appeared at the bottom of the page. The ink looked fresh, still glistening slightly in the firelight. They speak louder when the bloodline returns. My stomach dropped. I flipped backward through the journal, searching for context. Near the final pages, I found an entry dated 3 days before her death. The handwriting was shakier than the others. I kept him safe as long as I could. The forest waited patiently. It always waits. When I'm gone, it will call him back. The woods remember every promise broken, every soul taken, and every child stolen. Below the entry was a map of the forest. At its center, she had drawn a large circle labeled "The Mouth." A sudden knock rattled the front door. I jumped so violently I nearly dropped the journal. The knock came again. 3 slow, heavy thuds. I stared at the door, my throat dry. No one lived close enough to visit this late. And the gas station clerk made it very clear people avoided this place after dark. Another knock. Then a voice from outside. "Eli. It's me." My chest tightened. The voice sounded exactly like my grandmother. But she had been buried 2 weeks ago. I slowly approached the door, every instinct screaming at me to run. The handle felt icy cold beneath my hand. "Grandma," I whispered. Silence followed. Then the voice returned, softer this time. "Let me in, sweetheart. It's cold out here." Tears blurred my vision. The voice carried the same warmth I remembered from childhood, the same comforting tone she used when I woke from nightmares. But something felt wrong. My eyes drifted to the journal still clutched in my other hand. One of the pages fluttered slightly, though no wind blew inside the cabin. A new line appeared beneath the last entry. "Never open the door when the woods learn your name." My breathing stopped. The knocking grew louder, more aggressive. The doorframe rattled with each impact. "Eli," the voice screamed, losing its warmth. "Let me in." The wood groaned under the pressure, and I stepped back, realizing the lock wouldn't hold forever. Outside, the whispers returned, hundreds of voices rising together like a storm building behind the cabin. And through the chaos, I heard one phrase repeated over and over. "Bring him to the mouth. Bring him to the mouth." The windows began to shake. The fireplace dimmed suddenly, the flames shrinking as if something outside was stealing the air from the room. Then the first crack splintered across the front door. I staggered backward, my heart pounding as the whispers grew louder, closer, angrier. And just before the door burst open, I heard something move inside the cabin behind me. The floorboards creaked behind me. I spun around so fast the journal slipped from my hands and hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. My flashlight beam shook wildly as I aimed it toward the hallway leading deeper into the cabin. "Hello," I whispered. No answer. But I knew I had heard something. It wasn't imagination. It was the unmistakable sound of weight shifting across old wood. Behind me, the front door cracked again. Splinters burst outward as something slammed against it from the outside. "Eli!" My grandmother's voice shrieked, now twisted and distorted like it was being dragged through gravel. "Open the door." I backed toward the hallway, torn between two nightmares, whatever was outside, and whatever was now inside. The air inside the cabin suddenly felt heavier, thick with the smell of damp soil and rotting leaves. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied again. Another creak echoed from the hallway. Then footsteps, slow, dragging, coming toward me. The door exploded inward. Wood shards flew across the room as freezing air rushed inside like a tidal wave. The fireplace flames died instantly, plunging the cabin into darkness except for my trembling flashlight beam. I screamed and stumbled backward into the hallway as shadows poured through the broken doorway. I didn't see a body enter. It was like darkness itself had stepped inside. The whispers followed it. Hundreds of voices filled the cabin, overlapping in chaotic murmurs. Some cried, some laughed, some chanted words I couldn't understand. My name repeated endlessly among them. "Eli, Eli, Eli." I ran. The hallway led to 3 rooms. The kitchen, my grandmother's bedroom, and the storage room at the back. I sprinted toward the storage room, slamming the door behind me and shoving an old dresser in front of it. The whispers flooded the hallway outside. Something slammed into the door. Once, twice. The entire cabin shook. I collapsed against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The storage room smelled like dust and mothballs. Shelves lined the walls, packed with boxes, tools, and old hunting gear. My flashlight beam landed on something sitting in the center of the room. A circle, carved into the wooden floor. The same jagged symbol from the trees surrounded it. Inside the circle sat a small wooden chest. Another violent slam hit the storage room door. The dresser scraped across the floor an inch from the impact. I crawled toward the chest, my hands shaking. The whispers outside grew louder, angrier, like they knew I had found something important. The chest wasn't locked. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside, wrapped in yellowed cloth, rested 3 objects. A rusted iron key, a bundle of dried black feathers tied with red thread, a folded letter with my name written in my grandmother's handwriting. Tears stung my eyes as I grabbed the letter and unfolded it. "Eli, if you are reading this, it means the forest has called you home." My hands trembled as I continued. "Our family has guarded Ravenwood for generations. Long before this town existed, something lived beneath those trees. The settlers called it the Whispering Hollow, but the natives called it the Mouth." A deafening crash rattled the storage door. Wood splintered inward slightly, pale. Root-like tendrils pushed through the cracks before retreating again. I forced myself to keep reading. "The mouth is not a place. It is a living doorway. It feeds on memory, bloodlines, and broken promises. Your great-grandfather made a pact with it to protect this land. In return, one member of our family must guard the boundary stones. I was the last guardian, until now." My stomach twisted. "No," I whispered. The letter continued. "If the boundary stones fall, the mouth opens fully. The voices you hear are souls taken by the forest. They want new company. They will use familiar voices to lure you outside. Never trust them." A hand-shaped bulge pressed against the door from the outside. The wood bent inward as claw-like impressions scraped across its surface. I could hear breathing now. Wet, heavy, right outside. I flipped the letter over and found a rough map drawn on the back. It showed the cabin, the forest, and 5 marked points forming a large circle around something labeled. The mouth. Do not enter. Below the map, she had written, use the key at the heart stone. Seal it before dawn, or the woods will never stop talking. The door behind me cracked again, a long jagged split running from top to bottom. Cold wind blasted through the gap, carrying whispers directly into the room. Come outside, Eli, we miss you. Join us. The voices overlapped until they sounded like one massive, pleading entity. The wooden floor beneath the carved circle suddenly glowed faintly red. The symbol pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Instinctively, I stepped inside the circle. The whispers outside instantly faded. Silence fell. Even the pounding on the door stopped. I stared at the circle in shock. The air inside it felt warmer, safer. The bundle of black feathers in my hand suddenly felt hot. I dropped them and watched as they hovered slightly above the floor before settling into the center of the symbol. The circle glowed brighter. Then, the storage room walls began to change. The wooden planks darkened, twisting into bark. The ceiling stretched higher, branches forming where beams once stood. Within seconds, the storage room transformed into a miniature forest. And standing at the edge of the circle was my grandmother. She looked exactly as I remembered her. Same gray hair tied in a bun. Same soft blue sweater she always wore during winter. Tears streamed down my face. Grandma, I whispered. She smiled sadly. I was hoping you'd never have to come back here, she said softly. I reached toward her but stopped when I noticed something wrong. Her feet didn't touch the ground. They hovered inches above the floor, or whatever the floor had become. You're not real, I said, my voice cracking. Her smile faded slightly. I'm what the forest allowed to remain, she answered. A memory, a warning, and maybe a guide if you listen carefully. The circle pulsed brighter beneath me. Is it trying to kill me? I asked. She glanced toward the walls where shadowy faces pressed through tree bark, watching silently. It doesn't kill, she said quietly. It collects. A chill crawled down my spine. The boundary stones are falling, she continued. Something is breaking the pact. You must find the heart stone and seal it with the key before sunrise. What happens if I don't? Her expression hardened. The forest will spread. The whispers will leave Ravenwood, and they will never stop calling for you. The tree walls suddenly trembled. Cracks spread across them as clawed hands forced their way through bark and wood. They are finding you, she whispered urgently. The circle cannot hold forever. How do I reach the heart stone? I asked desperately. She pointed behind me. The storage room floor split open silently, revealing stone steps descending into darkness beneath the cabin. The tunnels were built by your ancestors, she said. They lead to the center of Ravenwood, to the mouth. A deafening roar echoed through the walls as shadowy figures began forcing themselves halfway through the tree bark. Their bodies looked stretched and incomplete, like silhouettes trying to become solid. Go, my grandmother shouted. I grabbed the key and sprinted down the stone stairs. The moment I stepped off the circle, the whispers returned, screaming, furious, echoing through the tunnels like a storm chasing me underground. The staircase spiraled downward deeper than the cabin foundation should allow. The air grew colder with every step, and the smell of wet earth thickened. Behind me, something slithered down the stairs. Not walking, crawling, fast. I didn't dare look back. The staircase ended at a narrow tunnel carved directly through rock and roots. Symbols identical to the ones on the trees glowed faintly along the walls, guiding the path forward. The whispers changed tone as I ran. They sounded excited now, hungry. The tunnel widened into a massive underground cavern. My flashlight beam barely reached the ceiling. Stone pillars covered in ancient carvings surrounded a massive sinkhole in the center. Black mist poured out of it like smoke rising from a wound in the earth. And around the sinkhole stood 5 tall stone pillars. Boundary stones. 4 of them glowed faint blue. The 5th flickered weakly, cracked straight down the middle. The moment I stepped into the cavern, the whispers stopped completely. The silence was worse. The black mist rising from the sinkhole shifted slowly, like something massive breathing beneath it. Then a voice rose from the darkness. Not whispers. One voice. Deep, ancient, and impossibly loud inside my head. The bloodline returns. The cracked boundary stone shattered completely. The cavern shook violently as the black mist surged upward, forming towering shapes twisting into human outlines. The ground beneath me trembled as the sinkhole widened slowly, revealing endless darkness below. And in that darkness, something moved, something enormous, something waking up. The iron key in my hand suddenly burned red hot, forcing me to drop to my knees. The voice thundered again. The mouth opens. The remaining boundary stones flickered violently, their glow weakening with every passing second. I forced myself to stand, gripping the key tightly despite the pain. Because deep inside me, I realized something horrifying. The forest wasn't calling me here to die. It was calling me here to replace my grandmother. The cavern trembled as the last 4 boundary stones flickered like dying candles. The black mist pouring from the widening sinkhole thickened, forming towering shapes that twisted into human silhouettes before melting back into smoke. My ears rang as the ancient voice roared again inside my skull. The Guardian has returned, but the pact is broken. I staggered forward, gripping the burning iron key. Every step toward the sinkhole felt heavier, like the ground itself was trying to pull me back. The cracked boundary stone lay shattered beside me, its pieces vibrating with dark energy leaking from below. The mist shifted suddenly. Faces began forming inside it. Hundreds of faces, screaming, crying, begging. Among them, I saw something that made my heart stop. My grandmother. Her face appeared briefly, trapped inside the swirling darkness. Her mouth moved silently before vanishing back into the mist. Tears blurred my vision. You promised you would protect them. Her voice whispered faintly inside my mind. I fell to my knees beside the broken stone, clutching the key tighter. The map from her letter flashed in my memory. The heart stone had to be inside the sinkhole itself. The voice thundered again, louder this time. Step forward, blood of the Guardian. Become the door, or be consumed by it. The ground cracked beneath me as the sinkhole widened further. Cold wind howled upward, carrying thousands of overlapping whispers chanting my name. Fear wrapped around my chest like chains. But then I remembered something my grandmother once told me when I was a child afraid of thunderstorms. Some storms don't pass, Eli. Some storms need someone brave enough to stand in the rain. I stood. Slowly, painfully, I stepped toward the edge of the sinkhole. The mist surged upward as if welcoming me. The key in my hand glowed brighter, burning through my skin but somehow refusing to fall. At the very center of the darkness, I saw it. A massive stone pillar rising from within the abyss, the heart stone. Ancient symbols pulsed across its surface, identical to the carvings around the forest. Cracks were spreading across it. If it shattered, the forest would spread beyond Ravenwood forever. I took one final breath and jumped. The fall felt endless. The mist swallowed me completely, filling my ears with screams and memories that weren't mine. I saw glimpses of lost hikers, vanished townsfolk, and generations of guardians standing where I now fell. I landed hard against cold stone. The heart stone towered before me, glowing faintly blue beneath spreading cracks. I forced myself up and staggered toward it, raising the iron key with trembling hands. The ancient voice whispered now, almost curious. Why do you resist? Because, I gasped, pressing the key into a deep symbol carved into the stone. Someone has to end this. The key melted into the heart stone instantly. Blinding blue light exploded outward, flooding the abyss. The cracks sealed rapidly as the mist shrieked, pulling away from me like it was being dragged back into the earth. The cavern above shook violently. The whispers turned into distant echoes, then silence. Warm light surrounded me, lifting me gently off the ground. For a moment, I saw my grandmother standing in the glow, smiling peacefully. You kept the promise, she said softly before fading away. I woke up outside the cabin at sunrise. The forest stood still behind me. The trees looked normal again. Birds chirped cautiously as sunlight touched Ravenwood for the first time since I arrived. But something felt different. I heard it faintly, deep beneath the earth. Not whispers, breathing, waiting, and somehow, I knew the truth. The mouth was sealed, but now, it was listening through me.